I'm doing real quick first.
Okay, we about to
They're in
go.
the jar.
We're live, Josh.
Don't tell me not to talk to my child.
Girl, stop the foolishness.
Our relationship is not foolishness, is it, Josh?
Both y'all foolish.
Oh, wait. Move over. I got to do my normal.
There's no such thing as normal for you.
Hi, love, this is Miss Carol. This is what I do on the normal. And then I say, how's my hair?
Share the live. Share the live.
Good morning.
Every week.
Not every week. I've been kind of missing. I've been missing some. I've been missing some weeks.
Share this live. Good morning, cuz. Good morning, Lionel. Share this live. Share this live.
I want that other one to come on and tell you to listen to me.
Anyway, you requesting specific audience members. I take Carl. Thanks, Carl.
Yes.
Mm-mm.
One of my favorite viewers.
Right, whatever. I might actually have some people who will side with me every blue moon.
Oh, Miss K-Tree. Good morning.
Morning.
I missed you yesterday.
Miss you in the face.
Oh, I got your email. Yay, for
Good morning, Tony.
Yes.
Morning, Pastor Dan.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
What's up, D?
Good morning. Good morning. It's Monday morning with the Moores.
I'm Terrence Moore.
And I'm Cheryl Moore. And we are back live and at it. Ooh.
It has been a crazy week. I'll say it's an interesting week, especially for me.
So, life update. We missed last Monday. Terrence was traveling. See, when you have children, they're still your children.
Young adults.
We call them, when they're learning adulting, when you send them to college.
And think they're grown.
Then you still have to parent them. That's what we call it. And sometimes pop-ups, no matter how many hours, 8 hours in all, one way, 16 hours, just to show up at your door to say,
I'm here. I'm downstairs. Well, what you mean? I showed up at his dorm.
Right. Parent update.
Acting a fool.
You know, junior in college, scholarships doing well. Yeah, you gotta check it in. Check it in. Yeah. See, take notes and learn. Take notes and learn.
Because when you think you know everything and you don't listen and you've been raised with more common sense.
I mean, they still ultimately have the decision.
Yeah, they know. But you can't say you didn't know.
Yeah, didn't know.
And if I'm sacrificing almost 8 hours one way after performing a phenomenal wedding.
Oh, life update. So we performed the wedding, which is one of our favorite ordinances to do. And, you know, as we tell our life story and move the story along, I don't know, it's at a good pace. It's an amazing thing when two people make the commitment to start their journey. And it's also an encouragement to people who desire to be wed. It's always a great, tremendous, an increase of energy and encouragement and strength to know that your day is coming and in a good way. And so, we don't have the perfect marriage by any stretch any stretch of the imagination. We do not have the perfect marriage, but we believe so strongly in commitment. And
I love this girl.
Usually it's the one that probably wants to get out, but
reactionary. She falls back. She slips back.
The older I've gotten in the latter years, I'm good because I realize I have a lot of time in, and when he kicks the can first, that's me with fat pockets. Y'all hear what I'm saying?
Change my benefits.
So, yes, share this as we continue our story on this journey of church planting.
Mm-hmm.
And we had talked about so much the last time, but I think the power of planting was you're not realizing we had already gone through the diagnosis. He was doing the chemo.
Trying to be normal.
You're right. That was the huge part. When Terrence had cancer, he frustrated me as a caregiver because he was not in denial, but he tried to normalize the situation.
Because I was beginning to sense the pressure, and I was trying to relieve the pressure.
Right.
And that was what I noticed, not realizing there was a whole lot of other things going on.
Right. He was normalizing the situation and frustrating it and making it worse. So now you're trying to do things around the house. You're trying to go outside. You're not supposed to be in these dealing with these air factors and
I'll try to do it when she's out the house.
Right. Environmental issues. It was frustrating
because the boss wouldn't let me do anything.
Right. It helped a lot when his mom came up. She really helped, ease some of the pressure off of just helping with the housework and things. And I think part of our story, we just need to reiterate, we weren't in the strongest. We had great insurance. We were self-employed because he was doing real estate at the time, and I had my own consulting firm, and I was also teaching. So we had, income coming in, substantial income, but it didn't take the pressure off of what it is when that drops to a one-person income and 2 kids and living in a house with a mortgage that's over $6,000 a month, and lifestyle and utilities and food and 2 very active kids. And, I tried to, during the summertime, doing the bulk when now the chemo treatment is during the summer, my best to keep the boys busy and sent them to camp and things. And sometimes I didn't afford, my family had to help pay for the camp. Couldn't afford to send them to a full day camp. They went to half day, and just trying to keep them occupied, trying to work.
Right.
It was a lot going on, and just trying to get myself some self-care of being in some group support as a caregiver. It was a lot. It was very, very overwhelming.
And the chemo was beginning to take more effect.
It was taking more effect.
Not with my hair or anything, but I was the more
tired.
Chemo I got, I was more tired, and I was still during the church planning process. We had made a commitment to at least, to always attend the church. We found a church that we were going to.
He couldn't go though.
Yeah, I couldn't go every week. I only went the week that I didn't go to chemo. And then the week that I had chemo, I had to stay home, and I wanted to so bad, but of course, the longer things go, I couldn't be around a lot of people.
Good morning, Dad. Good morning,
my immune system was hitting the tank, and I was getting upset because I couldn't get to church. I love not church. It is not so much of from a religious perspective. I just love being in that atmosphere. I just love the fellowship. And I just love just worshiping with my family.
Ooh, we forgot one part.
What's that?
The part that we forgot to tell, and this was very interesting because it could spin you out. Okay, this part can really spin you out if you ever been in this predicament. So by the time we were planning church, we had been members of our former church for the life of our marriage.
I know where you're going.
We were leaders there and everything. And the year before this whole chemo and everything, we had said we wanted to branch out.
Right.
And had a long meeting with our pastors. We had traveled, been with them and everything. And so what ended up happening, we weren't really. We were going to another church, but when we officially left, we transitioned everything. We We don't do this thing that's familiar around here. You just up and leave.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Drop keys and do all kind of crazy stuff and
we
just
tell them about the transition.
Act wacko and stuff. Because how you do a thing is how you're going to process through a thing.
Man.
So we processed that right, and it wasn't overnight. It took months to do it. And we planned and we sat down and we talked to them, and they understood that we didn't want to plant a church, but we wanted to spread the wings. Now, were they pleased about it? No. What agitated it were people that wanted us out of there because we were very high in the organization, and they thought that we were the funnel. They thought that we were the stoppage to them doing whatever great
getting to the pastor.
So in his ear and all that kind of stuff. So there was a gap of time. Now, full circle, things have come full circle because what God has put together, nothing is going to keep it asunder. I don't care what traps the enemy sets. But what was interesting, this all occurs now. We're gone for the betterment of over a year, and it looks like when we made the transition, life fell apart.
Right. Before you even say that, just briefly, is God had all of this planned about us planning a church. We just weren't. No, he didn't tell us about it.
No,
but it was part of his plan.
Right.
Because after about 2 years prior to that, Cheryl felt an urge that she needed to leave her position in administration, and she put everything in order for the transition, and that was very hard. We had already appointed somebody and everything, so that was fine. And then the following year, I'm going, well, that's when we started going into other areas of the church to help build the weak areas of the church, weaker areas of the church.
And then I tried to jump back in.
Yeah.
And I
made a mess.
I made a mess because my season had closed.
Right. And so then the next year, God is telling me, I want you to resign out of being a financial officer. He didn't tell me to leave. He just said, I want you to resign the position. So I told my pastor, I said, okay, this is what God is telling me. And he was not, he was like,
he trusted him to the death.
Yeah. I mean, and he was like, are you sure? I said, yeah.
He trusted him to the death.
And I told him, and he would not accept my verbal resignation.
He just said, y'all move through the process.
Right. And that was
it. So
we still went through it. And then I'm telling him, hey, pastor, I need to really start transitioning. He goes, okay, T, all right, we'll sit down. And we would sit down a lot of times. And as soon as I brought up my leaving, all of a sudden something comes up or something happens, or I need to talk to you about this first. And he just kept prolonging. And by October, because this is now, I'm telling him this by January, February about this part. And by October, I said, we really need to transition. And I'm giving him names. Okay, what about this person? What about this person to take over? I had already been training them. They've been on my team. So all of this stuff, trying to get him to get it. And he wouldn't do it. So here's the thing. And God said, if he doesn't accept it by December, put it in writing. So we're having dinner and everything else, even through all of Thanksgiving, we're talking. I mean, we are constantly talking because our families were tight. It's like family. We talk like every day. And finally, I go, Pastor, we need to really seal this thing. But meantime, I had already started setting up systems. I was going to obey God, period. I was going to obey God. I already set up the systems and everything so it could be a transition. I was closing the system. I was closing everything out. And December, I had that last talk with him, the last day of November. He wouldn't accept it, so I put it in writing. When I put it in writing, he finally go, all right, T, all right, I'm okay, all right. What's the plan? I already had it. Here it is. Yeah. Here it is. But I get it. Is when your leader trusts you so much, and it's hard to do that. But I also understood that I had to obey God, and I also made sure that I did it right. Not even knowing that what God wanted for us to begin to build was going to come up. So it's crazy, but we never left the church after I resigned and everything else.
We were not opposed,
we never left the church.
Members of the church,
right?
Because you do things in decent and in order. Because the way you do a thing, it will become a part of whatever you're building,
right?
But it's important always to notate that Terrence had a dream.
Yeah,
and in that dream, he had on his black cassock, and everything around him was white, but he was in all black. And there was someone that was very good, and he was too, saying, he told me, Cheryl, God is going to judge me for our continued journey. I'm going to go under judgment. And man, you don't know why. He goes, it's necessary for the future of our journey.
And no idea what that meant.
It is necessary. He goes, I'm not going to die, but I'm going to, and it's necessary that we do this. Part of that, and the chemo it was kind of sort of, he attributed it to being a part of his judgment, because he said it was a cleansing of the cells and that he was going to survive. And it took all of us through, because we're already in a family in a broken state where, everything that we have built, from financials, we have multiple businesses, we had real estate, multiple properties, the real estate business and the properties. And, we're traveling extensively, was very secure materialistically. But we realized that for the ministry and for what we were going to be called to, God was breaking us out of that, and that we had to learn to survive when there was no support. Right. And we had to be a strong family unit to survive everything. And that included our children. That included that also. It taught us how to relate to the issues of the people that we would be serving. And
I tell you, God prepares you a whole lot. And,
because nothing is worse than having to learn
on the job,
your pastoral life while you're in that. And
you're going to learn anyway, but there's some things that could really be done ahead of time.
Right. If we weren't under really great, amazing pastors that really pastored and trained us and taught us, and we didn't just up and yank ourselves out. I mean, we really stayed there, and we took the feedback, and he developed us, trained us.
Man,
we would be like two lost people down south. Two chickens running off with our heads cut off. I mean, honestly, because it is overwhelming when you deal with the life of your family. We have our own family issues, and you got to deal with other people's issues. I mean, that's enough to take you out. So I get why there's such a high rate of pastoral suicide. I mean, I'm kind of chuckling, but it's a serious situation where you're not understanding. And then when it's time to give honor, people got a problem with that. I'm not saying it's all people. I would take nothing back from my journey, because I'm in it for what God called us to do. Right. But you really see it in that. And so we were we had our families. They weren't really here, but they were support systems. But when you don't have, but he was showing us, you got to go through this and stay in this when you don't have a church. You can be in a church and not have the support of the church. Right. And you have to realize that as a leader, as a pastor, you got to stay in it to win it for the right reasons. And our family, when he was going through that cancer, we were by ourselves. We didn't have a pastor that we can call. I love our fellowship now. I love where we are now. But as after time, listen, you have to be processed. The promise and the prophecy has to process. Right.
And when even though we left, the sting from from our pastor, he was not keen on it. He knew it was very crazy. He knew that something like this would happen, but because our lives were so intertwined, it was hard for him. So the human part kicked in.
The human part, and it was painful, it was hurtful, but you have to understand that it was not him, and we didn't take it personal. It was his emotional response. Right. And knowing that in the future, all things come full circle, and in that time of transition. But again, it's because we did it right. You can't just leave things and trash things and tear up your family name, your friend's name, your pastor's name, your manager's name, and then expect that there would be healthy fruit on the other side.
And let me tell you something. And this is the real, especially with us being at that level in our former church, and it was a tear.
Good morning, Pam.
It was a tear because now people were like, okay, what happened? Why are y'all leaving? Right. Why did y'all do that? Yeah. Y'all were close. Y'all traveled together. Y'all were, and so the inquiry was like, okay, what happened? What happened? And you know what we did? We said whatever they say, that's what it is. Because you're not going to get a story from us. You're not going to. We said what we had to say in front of the congregation. Right. We prayed out and everything else. We and we did it right by giving him a verbal resignation as well as a formal resignation. We didn't leave to start another church. It was nothing like that. It was just a ministry group that we had saw in our vision and everything like that.
Just teaching prayer.
Just prayer. That's it. And it was but what we did was when people, blowing up our phone. What happened? Everyone, no one could ever say we said anything negative.
But now they
were
did,
like,
and you
they did. But we said whatever they said, whatever the story, that's what it is.
And we lived through that season to say, if you said that's what I said,
that's what we said.
Excuse me, I'm not going to respond.
Right.
Because in our heart, we believe that the relationship over years would survive.
It wouldn't matter.
That season. Mm-hmm. And it did, because I feel closer to them now.
Absolutely.
Than I have when I was directly under them.
Right.
He is appropriate for where we are in our pastor, in our life.
Right.
And to know that your husband is dying of cancer, and you're wondering, now we're questioning I'm questioning the decision.
Yeah, because I was the one who said
our money, everything is falling apart. Was this the right? Am I even in the right place?
And when people heard about my cancer, they're like,
"Oh, that's what you get." God does not. You can't worry about what people's comments and their quest of diagnosis of what your destiny is. You can't let people diagnose. And go, you know what I'm trying to say? You can't allow people to do a diagnostic on your destiny.
When they have no idea what it is.
I'm trying to be nice about saying it.
Well, you
cannot allow people to do a diagnostic on your destiny. Because they can't prescribe your process. There's no prescription for your personal process.
And most of it, they nosy and trying to be petty and stir up a mess.
Especially if that's not who you're submitted to. And any leader, if you aspire to be a business owner, a manager, a pastor, a missionary, if you listen and you're able to have tickling ears of that many different opinions,
right,
then you're an opportunist.
Absolutely.
You're not a futurist for favor and for open doors. You're an opportunist, and you're dangerous. Because you can't have the itchy ears to follow what people, especially people who are at your same level.
Right.
Or even not at your level, have not even reached the pinnacle of where you are or that peak.
Exactly.
We hear it all the time. And we had to go through that in order to be able to deal with the lives of others and continue in that journey. Again, he was supposed to go through a year, almost of chemo, and then another 6 months of
radiation. And after the first visit, they said we saw no signs. We saw no signs of the cancer.
He goes through one part of the chemo.
Right.
After the second, the first one was in the hospital. Mm-hmm. Second one was at the center.
At the clinic, right.
At the clinic. Then after the second one, he goes and gets all of his numbers read. There's no sign of cancer.
And
like what?
Exactly. I'm like, yeah, no more chemo. I'm good.
However,
no more chemo.
They had started this chemo. Watch this. They started this chemo, and they're giving it in parts. If he didn't finish at least that regimen, which ended at the end of July.
Oh, no. Yeah, right. Go ahead.
It would have killed him. So even though he was cleared, they had to finish the process.
But
the administration.
And see, that was their part of it. You know what God said? Finish the process. You're not done. I'm like, What do you mean? What are you talking about?
You have to
I'm like, God,
process.
you healed me. I'm good. I'm dead. No. You finished the process. I have some more stuff to tell you.
Let's stop there. It's a good stopping place. That's cool. You have to write that down so you remember next week now. That's because we get happy. Right. We get happy.
God does not play when you have a destiny on your life. When God has a plan that's greater than you can understand, God has a way of preparing you. Oh my God. He does not play. He doesn't play. And the more you resist, the worse it gets, the harder the journey. You cannot deny the process of God, and you can't
jump out. Exactly. Get happy at a report. We get happy at progress, and then
think that's the totality of it.
We think that's the completion of the process. You know, you can't jump off the field in the middle of the
game. It's for real.
Yeah.
So I tell you, it's something.
Yeah, it is. So, you know, even though you get reports that you're doing well, don't let it go to your head. You got to stay in the process and endure it. And out of endurance comes excellence.
And I think usually when you get those little victories, that is just God saying, I'm with you. Not for you to jump out, but it's like, I'm with you with this.
Yeah, and I think it's because, Terrence, sometimes we say we want to sign God, show me whether I'm right, show me am I wrong. And then we get frustrated when he doesn't do it. But the reality of that is, can you even handle it?
Right.
Can you handle the good feedback? People have a problem handling the truth, but can you even handle the truth of testimony?
Exactly.
And that's the key. You got to be able to handle it. If it goes to your head, you veer off. Like, okay, God, I got it from here. Wait.
How you get from the passenger seat to the driver's seat? It's like, nah.
Just say it from the Lord. I shall prosper in thy days to come. Really? Come on, we don't stop this business.
Exactly. And things get jacked up because the process is not done.
No, you can't even pay your own bills on time. I'm gonna sacrifice. I'm gonna sacrifice my time and my seed and go ahead and sow the seed.
I'm gonna misappropriate God's seed, and then I want Him to bless what I misappropriated. I want you to bless my stolen seed. People can be
word of the Lord is so
spiritual idiots.
Be wise.
Thieves in one blessing.
Endurance produces excellence.
Enjoy the process.
Yes.
Have a happy week.
Yes.
Bye-bye. How phenomenal. Yeah. Be blessed.